The attic smelled of forgotten summers, a heavy musk of mothballs and thyme. Eli, 16 and restless, stood frozen as his grandmother's trembling hands pressed a small, dust-caked box into his palms. Her eyes, sharp despite their 80 years, held a secret that made his heart stutter. "Open it when you're ready," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread stretched across decades. "But not here. Not now." Eli's fingers tightened around the box, its weight heavier than its size suggested, as if it carried the gravity of a life he didn't yet understand. He'd come to this crumbling farmhouse in rural Maine to escape the noise of his city life, parents fighting, schools suffocating, friends drifting. His grandmother, Esther, was his last anchor, the only one who didn't demand he figure it out. But now, standing in the attic's slanted shadows, he felt something shift. The box wasn't just old wood and rusted hinges. It was a door to something bigger, something that made his throat tighten. Eli shoved the box into his backpack and stumbled down the creaky stairs, his sneakers kicking up dust. Outside, the late August sun burned low, painting the fields gold. He wanted to run, to shake off the unease, but Esther's gaze lingered in his mind. She'd always been a storyteller, tales of her youth, of war and love and loss, but this felt different. This wasn't a story she'd tell. This was one she'd hidden. Back in his room, he sat cross-legged on the sagging bed, the box on his lap. Its surface was carved with faint, swirling patterns, like ripples frozen in time. He traced them, half expecting the wood to hum under his touch. His phone buzzed, another text from his mom, probably about the divorce again, but he ignored it. The world outside could wait. He pried the lid open. A faint creak, then silence. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, was a brass key, a folded letter, and a photograph so old it curled at the edges. The photo showed a young woman, maybe 20, with Esther's sharp eyes but a stranger's smile. She stood beside a man in a soldier's uniform, his arm around her, both of them laughing under a tree. Eli's breath caught. Was this his grandmother? And who was the man? The letter was sealed with wax, stamped with a crest he didn't recognize. His hands shook as he broke it open. The handwriting was Esther's, but younger, bolder. "Eli, if you're reading this, I'm gone, or close to it. This key unlocks more than a door, it unlocks my life, the parts one couldn't speak aloud. Find the truth in the old mill by the river. But be careful. Some secrets fight to stay buried." His pulse raced. The mill? That rotting heap by the river, abandoned since before he was born? He glanced at the key, its teeth worn but gleaming faintly, as if it had been waiting for him. He didn't know what truth Esther meant, but the weight of her words pressed against his chest. Eli slipped the key into his pocket and headed downstairs. Esther was in her rocking chair, knitting, her hands steady despite her age. "You opened it," she said without looking up. It wasn't a question. "What's in the mill?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She paused, her needle still. "Answers. And questions you might wish you hadn't asked." He wanted to press her, but her tone stopped him. Instead, he grabbed his jacket and slipped out into the dusk. The river wasn't far, a 10-minute walk through the woods. The mill loomed ahead, its silhouette jagged against the fading sky. Ivy choked its walls, and the windows were dark, like eyes long closed. Inside, the air was damp, thick with mildew. His flashlight beam danced over broken beams and rusted machinery. The key burned in his pocket, but he saw no lock, no door that fit. Frustration clawed at him. Was this a game? A test? Then he saw Ida trapdoor beneath a pile of moldy crates. He shoved them aside, heart pounding, and found a rusted padlock. The key slid in perfectly, clicking with a sound that echoed too loudly in the silence. The trapdoor groaned as he lifted it, revealing a stone staircase spiraling into darkness. Eli hesitated. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to ask Esther what this was. But her words, some secrets fight to stay buried, pushed him forward. He descended, the air growing colder, the walls closing in. At the bottom, his flashlight caught something that made his breath hitch. A small, locked chest, identical to the one in his hands just hours ago. He knelt, hands trembling, and opened it. Inside was a journal, its leather cover cracked but intact. The first page bore a name, Lillian, 1943. Not Esther. Who was Lillian? Before he could read more, a shadow moved behind him. He spun, flashlight shaking, and saw a figure in the doorway, a man, old but not frail, with eyes like Esther's. "You shouldn't be here, boy," the man said, his voice low and rough. "That's not your story to tell." Eli's mouth went dry. He clutched the journal, heart hammering. Who was this man? And why did he look like he'd been waiting for Eli all along? The man's shadow stretched long across the stone floor, his silhouette sharp against the faint glow of Eli's flashlight. "Put the journal down," he said, stepping closer, his boots scraping the damp ground. Eli's grip tightened, the leather biting into his palms, as if letting go would unravel everything he'd just found. "Who are you?" Eli managed, his voice cracking. The man's face was weathered, lined like old parchment, but his eyes burned with a quiet intensity. He wore a faded jacket, the kind soldiers might have worn decades ago, and a silver chain glinted at his neck. "Name's Thomas," he said, stopping a few feet away. "And you're Esther's boy. Should have known you'd find your way here." His tone wasn't threatening, but it carried a weight that made Eli's skin prickle. "How do you know my grandmother?" Eli asked, standing slowly, the journal still clutched to his chest. Thomas's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Long story. Longer than you've got time for tonight. That journal's not yours to read. Not yet." Eli's mind raced. The journal, the key, the mill, none of it made sense, but Thomas's presence felt like a piece of the puzzle snapping into place. "This says Lillian, 1943, Eli said, holding up the journal. "Who's Lillian? And why's it locked away like this?" Thomas's face softened for a moment, a flicker of something like grief. Lillian was someone who mattered. To a lot of us. He stepped closer, and Eli noticed a tremor in his hands, betraying his age. "You're stirring up ghosts, kid. Esther didn't tell you everything for a reason." Eli's frustration boiled over. "Then why'd she give me the key? Why'd she send me here?" Thomas didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled a chair from the Shadowsa rickety thing that looked like it belonged in a museum and sat, gesturing for Eli to do the same. Against his better judgment, Eli sat, the journal heavy in his lap. "Esther's carrying a debt," Thomas said finally. "One she's been paying since the war. That journal's part of it. So's this place." He waved a hand at the damp walls, the chest, the staircase. "But you opening that box? That's her passing the debt to you." "Debt?" Eli's voice rose. "What debt? She's my grandmother, not some secret agent." Thomas chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You'd be surprised what people become when the world's falling apart. Esther was young once. So was Lillian. So was I." Eli opened the journal, ignoring Thomas's warning glance. The first page was a letter, written in the same bold hand as the one in the box. "July 12, 1943. They think I'm just a typist, but I've seen the codes. I know what's coming. If I don't act, no one will. Lillian." Eli's heart thudded. "Codes? War?" He flipped to the next page, but Thomas's hand shot out, stopping him. "Don't," he said sharply. "You read that. There's no going back." "Why?" Eli snapped, pulling the journal away. "What's so dangerous about a book?" "It's not the book," Thomas said, leaning forward. "It's what it proves, what it could still destroy." Before Eli could respond, a faint creak echoed from the staircase. Both of them froze. Thomas's hand went to his pocket, and Eli's stomach dropped as he saw the glint of a small knife. "Stay here," Thomas whispered, standing. "Don't move." But Eli wasn't about to sit still. He shoved the journal into his backpack and followed, keeping his flashlight low. The staircase was empty, but the air felt heavier, like someone or something had just passed through. Outside, the night was thick with fog, the river's murmur the only sound. Thomas scanned the trees, his posture tense, like a soldier still fighting a war long over. "Who's out there?" Eli whispered. "Could be no one," Thomas muttered. "Could be someone who's been watching this place for years." Eli's mind spun. Watching? For what? The journal? The chest? He thought of Esther, alone in her rocking chair, and a chill ran through him. Was she safe? Thomas turned to him, his face half lit by the moonlight. "Go home, Eli. Talk to Esther. But don't read that journal until you're sure. Once you know, you can't unknow." Eli nodded, but his fingers brushed the journal in his bag. He wasn't sure of anything except that he couldn't stop now. The walk back to the farmhouse was a blur, his thoughts tangled with questions. Who was Lillian? What had Esther done during the war? And why was Thomas, a stranger who knew too much, guarding a secret in a rotting mill? When he reached the house, Esther was still in her chair, but her knitting lay abandoned in her lap. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Eli saw fear in them. "You met him, didn't you?" she said softly. Eli nodded, unable to speak. The journal felt like a live wire in his bag, buzzing with truths he wasn't ready to face. Eli sat across from Esther, the journal burning a hole in his backpack. The lamplight cast long shadows across her face, deepening the lines of a life he was only beginning to understand. "Who's Thomas?" he asked, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. Esther's hands stilled, her fingers curling around the arms of her rocking chair. "Thomas is a ghost," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "One I thought I'd buried long ago." Eli leaned forward, the journal's weight pulling at him. "He said you have a debt, that the journal Lillian's journal's part of it. What did you do, Gran?" Esther's eyes drifted to the window, where the night pressed against the glass. "I was 22, she began, her voice trembling with memory. "The war was everywhere. I wasn't just knitting and baking bread, Eli. I worked for the government. Not as a soldier, but as a listener. A decoder." Eli's breath caught. The photograph in the box, the young woman with sharp eyes, laughing with a soldier. That was Esther. "You were a spy?" "Not a spy," she said quickly. "A clerk, officially. But I saw things. Heard things. Messages the enemy thought were safe. Lillian was my partner. My friend." Her voice cracked on the last word, and Eli saw her hands tremble. "What happened to her?" he asked, dreading the answer. Esther's gaze dropped to her lap. "Lillian was braver than me. She took risks I wouldn't. She found something, codes, plans, something big, and she paid for it. I let her pay for it." The room felt smaller, the air thick with guilt. Eli wanted to ask more, but the pain in her eyes stopped him. Instead, he pulled the journal from his bag and set it on the table between them. "This is hers, isn't it? Why'd you hide it?" Esther reached for the journal, then stopped, as if it might burn her. "Because it's proof," she said. "Proof of what we did, and what we didn't do." Before Eli could press further, a knock at the door made them both jump. Esther's face paled. "Don't answer it," she whispered, but Eli was already moving. He opened the door to find a woman, maybe 40, with short cropped hair and a nervous smile. She held a small envelope, sealed with the same crest as the letter in the box. "I'm Clara," she said, glancing past Eli to Esther. "I'm Lillian's daughter." Eli's heart stopped. Lillian's daughter? The room spun as he stepped aside, letting Clara in. Esther stood, her face a mask of shock and something deeper, hope, or maybe fear. "Clara," she whispered, like a prayer. "I found your letters," Clara said, her voice shaking. "The ones you sent my mother before she disappeared. I've been searching for you. For answers." She held out the envelope. "This came for you today. Someone left it at my hotel." Esther took the envelope with trembling hands and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in stark black ink. "The mill. Midnight. Come alone." Eli's stomach dropped. "You're not going," he said, but Esther's eyes were already distant, lost in a past she couldn't escape. "I have to," she said. "This is my debt." "No." Eli snapped, grabbing her arm. "You sent me to the mill. You gave me the key. This is my story now, too." Clara's eyes widened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she pulled a small photograph from her pocket, a younger version of the one in the box, showing Lillian and Esther together, their faces bright with defiance. "She'd want you to finish this," Clara said to Esther. "Both of you." Eli's mind raced. Thomas, the journal. Now Clara, it was too much, too fast. But the note's words burned in his head. "Come alone." Whoever sent it didn't know he was involved. That was his advantage. "I'm coming with you," he told Esther, his voice firm. No arguments. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face, and for the first time, she nodded. "All right, Eli, but you stay close." They left at 11, Clara staying behind to keep watch at the house. The woods were silent, the fog thicker than before. The mill loomed ahead, its silhouette a scar against the sky. Eli's flashlight shook in his hand, but he kept moving, Esther's frail form steady beside him. Inside, the trapdoor was open, the chest gone. In its place was a single object, a brass locket, glinting in the moonlight. Esther gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Lillian's," she whispered. Before Eli could ask, footsteps echoed above. Heavy, deliberate. Someone was coming. The footsteps grew louder, each one a hammer against Eli's nerves. He grabbed Esther's arm, pulling her into the shadows behind a rusted machine. The locket gleamed on the floor, a beacon in the dark, and Eli's heart pounded as he realized it was bait. "Stay here," he whispered, but Esther's hand clamped onto his, her grip surprisingly strong. "We face this together," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Eli nodded, swallowing hard, as the footsteps stopped at the trapdoor. A figure descended, slow and deliberate. It wasn't Thomas. This man was younger, maybe 50, with a sharp jaw and cold eyes that scanned the room like a predator. He wore a dark coat, and in his hand was a small, black Devisea recorder, maybe, or something worse. "Where's the journal?" the man called, his voice cutting through the silence. "I know you're here, Esther." Eli's blood ran cold. How did he know her name? Esther's face was pale, but her jaw was set. She stepped out of the shadows before Eli could stop her. "It's gone," she said, her voice firm. "And you won't find it." The man's eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer, the locket crunching under his boot. "You're still protecting her, after all these years? Lillian's dead, Esther. The war's over. Give me the journal, and this ends." Eli's mind reeled. Protecting Lillian? But Lillian was gone. Clara had said so. He clutched the journal tighter in his backpack, his pulse racing. Who was this man, and why did he want Lillian's words so badly? Esther stood taller, her frailty replaced by something fierce. "You'll never understand what she stood for," she said. "You think it's about power? It's about promises. Ones I broke, and ones I'll keep." The man laughed, a hollow sound. "Promises? You let her die, Esther. You hid while she took the fall, and now you're dragging this boy into it." His eyes flicked to Eli, who froze, realizing he'd been seen. "Leave him out of this," Esther snapped, stepping in front of Eli. But the man was faster. He lunged, grabbing her arm, and Eli acted on instinct. He swung his backpack, the journal's weight making it a clumsy weapon, and caught the man in the shoulder. The man stumbled, cursing, and Eli pulled Esther toward the stairs. "Run," he shouted, but the man recovered, grabbing Eli's jacket. The journal fell, skidding across the floor. Eli dove for it, his fingers closing around the leather just as the man's hand clamped onto his wrist. "Let it go, kid," the man growled, but Eli kicked, catching him in the knee. The man howled, and Eli scrambled up, dragging Esther with him. They stumbled up the stairs, the man's shouts echoing behind them. Outside, the fog was a wall, swallowing the world. Eli's lungs burned as they ran, Esther's breathing ragged but determined. They reached the woods, ducking behind a tree as headlights flared in the distance. "A car. Someone else was here." "We can't go back to the house," Esther panted. "Not yet." Eli nodded, his mind racing. The journal was still in his hands, its pages a mystery he hadn't fully unlocked. "Who was that?" he asked, his voice shaking. Esther's eyes were distant, lost in memory. "Someone who's been chasing Lillian's truth for decades. I thought I'd outrun him." They moved deeper into the woods, the river's murmur guiding them. Eli opened the journal, unable to wait any longer. The pages were filled with coded messages, maps, and names, dozens of them, some crossed out. One entry caught his eye. October 3rd, 1943. "They know I have it. Esther will keep it safe. She's the only one I trust." Eli's heart sank. Esther had been carrying this burden for 80 years. "Gran," he said softly, "what did Lillian find? What's worth all this?" Esther's voice was barely audible. "Proof of a betrayal that could have changed the war. Names, dates, deals, people who sold out their own for power. Lillian died to protect it. I hid it to protect her memory." Eli's throat tightened. He thought of Clara, waiting at the house, unaware of the danger. He thought of Thomas, guarding the mill, and the man in the coat, still out there. "We have to finish this," he said. "For Lillian. For you." Esther looked at him, her eyes shining with tears. "You're braver than I was, Eli." They kept moving, the journal a lifeline between them. The headlights faded, but the danger lingered, a shadow that wouldn't let go. Eli didn't know what came next, more secrets, more enemies, or answers that might break them both. But he knew he couldn't turn back.